Hello, Mark Struthers here from Musical Notes. Amplesound has built its excellent reputation of producing natural-sounding acoustic guitars, in parallel to their electric guitar range too. And so added to this, it was inevitable Amplesound would produce one of the most natural-sounding bass guitar emulations as well. Here I'm going to look at both the ABJ and the ABP bass guitars. We'll start off by looking at the Jazz Precision emulation. ABJ is modelled on a Fender master-built Jazz bass and is available as 32 or 64-bit for Windows and Mac. The installation sample library size is around 4 GB and includes 14 articulations. Some of the most prominent are featured down here in the articulations area, but all 14 include sustain, palm mute, natural harmonic, hammer-on and pull-off, legato slide, slide in and out, pop, slap, tap, accentuated, staccato, and dead note. And therefore, because we've got all these articulations, it makes using ample bass really realistic, because we're not restricted to just one type of sound. Everything about playing ample bass really does emulate the playing style of a real bass player. Now, prior to walking you around the user interface here in this tutorial, let me just say that for those few of you that want to simply hear what it sounds like without knowing how it works, well, if that's the case, I think the easiest thing for you to do is to go over to Amplesound's website and simply download the 7-day demo, and that should allow you to play around with the software long enough to hear it. Alternatively, whilst you are at the Amplesound website, you'll also find a number of demo songs played via the two different Amplesound bass guitars. So that said, to satisfy the vast majority of people who want to have a look around the software and see how it works, I'll explain where things are and what the particular functions do. As we've just seen, I've got Ample Bass J running in standalone mode using Amplesound's AS Host utility. I did notice on some of the forums some people were having a little bit of difficulty nailing down exactly where this AS Host is. So if you come to this path on your PC, you'll find it. There it is, AS Host. So all you would need to do is launch from here or create a shortcut to place on your desktop. Anyway, once you do, you'll see it running like this, with no instruments loaded initially. Therefore, if you click here on Plugin, you'll gain access to a list of all your available Amplesound instruments. If initially you don't see your instruments, you'll need to set up the plugin path here. As you can see, I'm set up with a couple of folders here where my VST plugins are. If I want to add any more, I would simply click on plus and then scan again. I'm okay with this, so I'll cancel. And then of course now it's a simple case of choosing the particular instrument you want to use. I'll go for ABJ for our example. With it selected, I'll hit insert. And then immediately, as we would expect, Ample Bass J opens up. Now I'll just quickly check I can hear it. Okay, perfect. I'll start off then by looking at the settings panel, and I think most of what you see here is self-explanatory. However, let me draw your attention to this field, the instrument path field. When you originally installed ABJ, you will have designated the path to the location on your hard drive where the sound samples are that provide the playback of the bass. Now, if you subsequently feel that you want to move the samples to a different location, well, you can do. But you'll need to inform ABJ where the new location is, and you just need to change the instrument path here to that location. In my case here, I'm okay with this. I've got all the sound samples for ABJ on an external drive. So if you do want to change, you just need to change the instrument path here to that location, close ABJ and restart it so it can find them. Incidentally, if you wish to tune ABJ to a non-standard pitch, then set it here between 430 and 450 Hz. As you know, standard pitch is 440 Hz, and that's it centrally there. But as I say, you can change it between 430 and 450. And this is useful, I think, should you be using ABP to play along to an already existing recorded track that wasn't recorded at standard pitch. Another consideration you might have is if your PC is underpowered. Well, if that's the case, in the Save Resources field here, toggle this to on so that only main group samples are played. Your CPU will thank you for it. I'll switch it back to off for this example. Right then, let's look at the main instrument panel user interface again. These 4 tabs here, Main, Tab, Edit, and Settings, allow you to move between them, of course. We'll get back to these as we progress. For the moment, notice here to the right, you have the sample library switch indicating as finger here. And then over at the far right, actually I'm just going to close down the sample editor. Over at the far right here, we have this master volume rotary dial, and it's got a volume ratio dial to its right. The master volume dial can be adjusted to turn up or down, whereas its partner dial to the right adjusts the volume ratio of non-slap articulations to slap articulations, or in other words, it controls the difference in volume between a plucked and a slapped note. So if you want a slap note's volume to be louder than a non-slap note, adjust the dial to suit your listening preference. Ordinarily, I would assume that a slap note is louder than a plucked note. Having said that, owing to that disparity in volume, most bass players will use a compressor, evening out the difference between the two. And therefore, that's what you can do with this particular dial, effectively mimicking a compressed sound. Now, just getting back to what I mentioned a few moments ago, with inferior bass sampled software, you'd hear each individual note, and they might be recorded very well. But what makes ABJ stand out is its use of key switches to move between different playing styles or articulations as they are known. A real bass player would frequently adapt the tune to move between sustained notes, slap notes, muted notes, harmonic notes, slides, etc., etc. So, to be able to emulate that type of realism, ABJ adapts the key switch method. And using key switches along with the notes you are playing allows you to switch around with these different articulations. So when you are recording with ample bass, whatever notes you are playing, by using these articulations, the first one, for example, sustain, allows you to play the notes with a natural plucked sound. Or if you prefer, you can flick over and have a more slap or pop sound. Better still, as I've been alluding to, real bass players will adapt their playing style so that some notes are sustained naturally, some are slapped, some are muted, etc. Incidentally, to make things easier for you, all the notes that would play on a real jazz bass are featured along the virtual keyboard and have a blue line running underneath. This means that any of these notes when played on the virtual keyboard, or indeed via a hooked up external MIDI keyboard, will of course play any of these notes, the notes that feature on a real bass. There are a few more over here to the right, but these act in a way, to my mind anyway, like further articulations. And indeed, to be able to move between the different offered articulations means selecting one of the notes to the left that are underlined in yellow. Or is that an orange? More of an orange, isn't it? And to make it easy for us to know what each key does to the notes when pressed, these articulation notes, and remember these don't sound a bass note because they're outside of the natural note range of the bass strings, well, each of these articulation notes correspond to the abbreviated lights above. C0 down here for sustain is lit up with the abbreviation sus, and then if we use the key switch D0, this will create a palm muted sound. Notice also that as you roll over any of these, you're going to see comprehensive instructions about how to work the key switch and what it's actually going to do. So if you think about it, if you choose to play a sustained note, you'll need to ensure the articulation key switch C0 has been selected, and then from that point, every subsequent note will now play as a sustained note until you change to a different articulation, a different key switch, maybe to a slap note. And as I say, you'll know how the articulation notes affect the sounded notes by rolling over any of these lights. You'll see a comprehensive pop-up displaying information about how it modifies that note. And in fact, if I play you a quick demo, you'll get a clearer understanding how this works.